I want this to be Charlie Morton's last start ever in Major League Baseball. He's a free agent at the end of the year. He's in his 40s. I want the Mets to knock him out early. I want them to jump on that really mediocre fastball that he has because he's in his 40s now. You can't let him get ahead. You can't, because that curveball is still disgusting.
All right, Mets family, welcome back to the Mets series preview show. I'm your host, Rasheed McDonald, and with me I have a very special guest, my main man, Draftneck Mark. He's one half of the Mets Up podcast, and congratulations are in order. You guys have finally officially joined the Foul Territory Network, so I'm happy for you guys. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How do you feel?
Dude, feeling good, man. We worked with the Mets the last couple seasons, and then we ended up leaving that partnership together. So me and James have been grinding out on our own, so it's nice to join Foul Territory. Been a huge fan of their stuff. I've been on Foul Territory, so it's a match made in heaven, definitely for the both of us to be joining on to them.
That's great to hear, man. I'm excited for you guys, and I'm sure you guys are going to do some fantastic work with the people at Foul Territory. Shout out to them, man. They do a lot of good stuff. So let's get it started, man. I'm gonna throw a little bit of a curveball here, but about a week ago or so, Pete Crow Armstrong was on the Chris Rose podcast, and he was talking about the trade that sent him from the Mets to the Cubs, and he looked a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit uneasy, but I found it very interesting that in the conversation it came up that he thought Mark Vientos was the one that was going to get traded for Javi Baez at the time. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because I feel that Mark Vientos isn't getting talked about enough. He's had a tremendous season, not to count the month that he spent in AAA. So my question is, what is your take on why Mark Vientos isn't getting as much attention as he should be getting?
Yeah, so we actually kind of talked about this on the episode that we just recorded last night. And I think because of Francisco Lindor, I think because of Pete Alonso, I think because of some of the names that are on this team, it's very easy at times. Even Brandon Nimmo is not even like a huge name, but I think just in Mets fans' world, those are guys that you focus on a lot more. So I think with a guy like Vientos, he just kind of gets lost in the shuffle sometimes. Like Lindor, the guy right next to him, is having an MVP caliber season. And you don't realize that. We always bring up like that June 1st date when Jorge Lopez got cut from the team, that whole situation when they had the meeting, as like a turnaround moment for the Mets. But really, if you look at it, it's basically been since Mark Vientos has been playing every single day at third base for this team that they've been able to turn around. He's been one of the most productive offensive third basemen in the league. Defensively, still has room to improve. But at the plate, this is something that we've desperately needed the last few years. It's been a black hole at that position. Whether it was Brett Beatty or Eduardo Escobar or whoever was filling in, it just wasn't good enough. Even in the year when we had Eduardo in 2022, and he was just a league average hitter, you saw the difference it made. So for us to have Vientos like this, I mean, he is easily one of the most unsung heroes, not just on the New York Mets, but in all of baseball.
I 100% agree. And I said it in one of my videos a couple days ago that I will forever continue talking up Mark Vientos, because when I first saw Mark Vientos, one of the first things I saw, and people might call me crazy for it, I saw Manny Machado. I saw those skills at the batter's box. I felt like he had some of that in him, and we've seen it, He's hit 6 home runs in AAA this year. So if you add that with what he already has this season, we're talking about 30-plus home run potential for Mark Vientos. So anybody out there who's still questioning, no, don't question yourselves anymore. Mark Vientos is that dude, and he will be that for the foreseeable future. So I want to move on to some more future. In Luis Angel Acuna, he has been a revelation since getting called up. I was talking to Michael Barron in the last interview that I had, and I was telling him that I remember when Matt Harvey was on his way up, and his numbers weren't quite good at AAA because I think he came out and said that there comes a point where sometimes these players get bored. And it's not because they don't want to play, but it's just like, I want to be up in the big leagues already. So they kind of, either pressing or whatever the case may be. But what is your view on what we've seen so far from Luis Angel Acuna?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a combination of both of those things as well. Because I mean, we've even heard Francisco Lindor talk about it when he came up in Cleveland. He was like, I was kind of bored, man. Like I was like, why am I not at the major league level? Why am I not here? I know I'm good enough. And for Acuna, I don't even think it's like a personality or any sort of issue. I think it's a wanting to be better, wanting more competition, wanting to be at the level that they believe they were at. He also mentioned, and I think it kind of is getting underplayed a little bit, and it might have been taken more tongue in cheek than actual truth. He mentioned how he's like, the lights are better here. He's like, I can see the ball better at Citi Field than I could in Syracuse. And I think that's a huge difference. Like, if you can see the ball better, you're going to be able to have better plate discipline, have better swing decisions. We're still not going to see Luis Angel Acuna probably like ever walk. That's just never going to be his game.
No.
But he makes such good contact so consistently. I'm impressed. I'm flabbergasted how well he's been played. He's been incredible. What his future holds, not sure like what kind of player we can project him to be. But what he's been able to do, filling in for Francisco Lindor in this time, is unbelievably special. And it's at least got me like going, man, I can't wait to see more of Luis Angel Acuna at this moment. He's been phenomenal, and he's just so much fun to watch.
Yeah, it's when his brother, right, Ronald Acuna Jr. For those of you who don't know, when he came out and he said, "Listen, when I see him play, I see me play." He wasn't joking. You know, a lot of the people that seen Acuna so far in AAA this year, like, oh, he's don't expect that power that his brother has. I'm like, listen, he has it in his DNA. That's DNA right there, you know. And when the lights turned on, like you said, he turned up as well. And I cannot wait to see what the future holds for him and where the Mets put him. I'm so happy that he's so versatile. You know, he's not just, okay, we're just going to put him in shortstop. That's what he's going to be. No, he could try a lot of different things. And I feel like that's where Carlos Mendoza is really going to shine when he, figures out, okay, we're going to put him here. And, he's a good manager for that. And I think we're going to see that in the future as well. So now we're going to talk about the starting pitching. The starting pitching in September has been absolutely on another planet. Now, heading into the Philly series, right, the starting rotation, they had a 1.90 ERA as a staff, as a whole, right? And so my question is, how important has it been for their current playoff push? And do you see this momentum with this rotation continuing?
Yeah, I mean, I really hope it does. We definitely need it these next couple games. But what this rotation has done, I think, is another thing that's not being given enough credit, because you look back at the start of the year, people saw this rotation and said, one of the worst in baseball. What are they going to do? How are they going to get the innings? What's going to happen? Shout out Jeremy Hefner, what he's been able to do with Sean Manaea. And shout out Sean Manaea, too. Shout out the players. It's not just Hefner. It's both of these guys. Everybody wanting to get better, being able to make those adjustments, seeing what needs to be changed. And you've seen Sean Manaea has now become an ace. He's become an ace. He's going to get paid a ton of money this offseason. Luis Severino is looking like his old self, pitching big games, going deep into ball games. Like, this was a guy who, even last year, you thought, like, where is Luis Severino be? Could he be a reliever at some point this year? That was even a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Jose Quintana hasn't given up a run in, like, 3 weeks. Like, what these guys are doing is incredible. I don't think Quintana is going to be able to keep up, like, no runs. That's just not sustainable. But what we see from Severino, what we see from Manaea, even Peterson, McGill looked incredible the other night.
Mm-hmm.
I think all this stuff is super repeatable, and based on the process and the way that the Mets have gone about, just the preparation and the changes that they've made throughout the season with their repertoire, how they're attacking hitters, this stuff is sticky. And I think what Jeremy Hefner, what the Mets have built here with the pitching lab and everything, it's going to be seen by players across the league. You're going to have guys like maybe a Walker Buehler this offseason who's going to be looking for a short-term deal, wanting to come to the Mets because the proof is in the pudding now. Severino and Manaea are going to get paid. Why would you not want to be a part of this? They might even get paid by this team. They might be back next year. Like, it's so awesome what this pitching staff's been able to do, and I have all the faith in them. I'm not shaky with any of these guys right now.
I agree. What they have done is, I mean, think about it, right? No Scherzer, no DeGrom, no Verlander coming into this season. Kodai Senga goes down. Yep. Really only had one start. To think that this team is where they are, and because of pitching being one of those reasons, I mean, that is,
it's all coming.
Yeah, nope. That's wow. So yesterday, the Arizona Diamondbacks blew an 8-run lead to the Milwaukee Brewers, and now the Mets, with their win, are in the second wild card spot by virtue of tiebreaker, but they're in that spot. So what do you think of the other teams in this race? Because this race is coming down to the wire. So what do you think of these other teams, the Padres, the Braves, everyone in this race? What do you think of how they've been performing lately?
Yeah, I mean, the great thing is that at least the Mets control their own destiny. Win baseball games, win the next 2 out of 3. We're in the postseason. Don't have to worry about anything there. So that's really my main focus. But just outside looking in as a broader baseball fan, I think the Padres are the best of the teams. I think they actually might be one of the best teams in the National League. That's a team where in a perfect world, I don't think you want to run into the Padres right now in the postseason, the way that's starting pitching and that lineup and the bullpen. They just feel like they have one of the most complete teams. Saying it last night when I was at the game with James, I was like, I want the Phillies. I want the Phillies. I want the Braves. I want the Diamondbacks. Like, these are our teams. We even handled the Dodgers pretty well this year. I think the only team that we haven't played well that's in the postseason is the Brewers. Yep. And that's because we played them the first series of the year when this team was horrendous, when they played the worst baseball that they've played all season. So for me, it's really difficult to say that any of these teams I feel like you want to avoid or you don't want a piece of, because we've played really well. Mets are a good ball team. You go up against any of these teams the way they've been playing these last couple months, which is now sustainable. I think we can all agree that this is not a fluke. They didn't just get hot. It's been since June 1st. They're the best team in baseball record-wise. Give me any team here, but if the team that scares me the most, I think, is definitely the Padres. It's just because that bullpen is so much better than everybody else's. And you get a 1-run lead. We saw it happen in a couple of games when we played them recently. They're not giving it up between Jason Adam, Estrada, Tanner Scott, Robert Suarez. Like, you just named 4 guys. Brian Hoeing's been incredible. 5 guys deep. It's a tough team to beat, but I would love some revenge if we get that opportunity.
I want that too. I do want some revenge if we could get that, because I mean, the way I look at it, right? We get that number 2 spot. We got the Padres. If we fall back, we get the Brewers. So either way, I think the Mets are going to compete. But you're right. The Padres do scare me the most, because not so much because of their bullpen, even though the bullpen does scare me, and you're 100% correct about their bullpen. But the thing that scares me is what they got at the top of that rotation. Yeah. Mets haven't done good against Joe Musgrove. Mets haven't done good against Yu Darvish, and that's what scares me the most. You know, facing them, who they know how to beat this team, and they get up for those situations, right? Joe Musgrove especially, he is prepared and ready. He brings his best stuff when he faces the Mets. So that would scare me the most when it comes to the San Diego Padres. So another question on these teams. So what do you think are the Mets' chances of getting this second spot instead of the third spot?
I think it's really good. I mean, you look at how the Mets are playing, and like you said, we have the tiebreaker of the Diamondbacks. So even if things stay exactly the same, we still have the number 2 spot. And I think that's almost like one of the worst-case scenarios. I really do. I'm so confident in this team. I feel so much better than I did in 2022 going into Atlanta late in the season than I do right now. The issue here is going to be, what do the Mets do? Like, let's say they do clinch in Atlanta. Let's pretend like this world exists.
Right.
How do you handle that Milwaukee Brewers series? Are you playing to try and get that number 2 wild card spot, or are you going to take it easier? Are you going to give some guys some days off, just let guys rest? Make sure guys are in rhythm, because we know that's super important. But do you then start to take some guys off the field? Do you change up the pitching? Whatever it's going to be. And I think that's where it gets weird. And also, like, for the Diamondbacks, that's a team who probably wants to continue to win games as well, because with the Braves breathing down everybody's neck, nobody feels safe.
Right.
I think that the Mets are going to end up being that second wild card, just because I really do think we're going to take 2 or 3 in Atlanta, and I'm confident in that. And I think the Brewers are also probably going to do a little bit of just taking the gas off the pedal.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something that I genuinely haven't thought about until you asked me, because I'm just so – my brain is so, like, beat Atlanta, clinch the playoffs, and I'll wake up in the wild card, and whoever it is, I'm watching that day. Like, it won't matter to me. Like, at the end of the day, we're playing some team that's got yellow in it, it seems like. So
there you go. But there is some truth to a lot of what you just said. And, you know, when I look at it, that's why winning that game last night was so important, right? That's why Edwin Diaz going out there for a 6-out save instead of, you know, putting Budo out there for another inning was so important, because now the Braves aren't just trying to, fight us off. They're fighting off Arizona as well. And now Arizona's trying to fight them off. So now we got a 3-team kind of race to see who gets those final 2 spots instead of 1 spot. And that's why it was so important for the Mets to get that win last night. So now we're going to jump into this Braves series. So the Mets are going to face the Braves 3-game set in Atlanta. And the Braves are 85-71. And they're 2 games behind the Mets in the wild card entering this 3-game set. What are your expectations in these next 3 games for the Mets?
Blood. I want blood. I want blood spilt in Atlanta. I want to end this season's year, or end this team's season. I want to end it in Atlanta. I want to celebrate on their field. I want to be smoking cigars, popping champagne. I want to do it all. And I fully think that the way that this team's vibing, I think that win last night against Philadelphia, I think was such a huge take away, like what it actually meant for the standings and the games in hand. I think as a moral thing, as a mental thing for this team, so big to get 3 out of 4 against what is the best record in all of baseball, I think, or at least in the National League. To get one against a division rival, to get one against a team that just last weekend blew a couple bad games to. I think just to turn the page, get ready, focus on Atlanta with the day off. I think it's really big, and I'm really confident in what this team can do. I love our matchups. I know we're going up against Chris Sale and Max Fried and Charlie Morton. These are great pitchers too, but that's what we've done all year. We've gone up against great teams all year. We've beaten good pitching. We've hit these guys before. We'll hit them again. The last time we were in Atlanta, smacked them around. I know it feels like a millennium ago, but we handled them in Atlanta last time.
That is true.
DJ Stewart hitting big home runs. Pete Alonso getting big home runs. I was telling James last night, I was like, I think this is going to be the series where things start to change a little bit from where the Mets have been in the past with the Braves, and I'm really thinking Pete Alonso is going to have his huge Met moment this week where he's going to just go off.
Yeah, I want that. I want it because I want that for him. I feel like, and we're going to get to the Pete Alonso question a little bit later. But I really want that for him because I know it would mean so much to him and it would mean so much to the fans, considering that he is going to be a free agent at the end of the year. So the Braves and the Mets kind of sort of announced their rotations for this 3-game set. The Mets announced it at the end of the game, and then Buster Olney kind of was talking about what the Braves rotation is going to be like. So they're going Spencer Schwellenbach in Game 1. They're going to go Chris Sale Game 2, and then possibly Charlie Morton in Game 3. Taking a look at Spencer Schwellenbach, he is 3-2 on the season with a 3 ERA with 41 strikeouts and 10 walks in his last 7 games. Those are his last 7 games numbers, and that's what he's putting up. So what do these numbers say to you with Spencer Schwellenbach?
Yeah, I've been a big Schwellenbach fan, which hurts because obviously he's a Brave. But coming out of University of Nebraska in, I think it was a 2021 draft, one of my videos I do every year was like best picks after the first round. He was a second-round pick by the Braves, and I was like, I really like this guy's stuff. He was a really young pitcher, played a lot of shortstop in college, but he threw 95, and he had a wicked slider. And for me, I go, okay, you have those two things that are major league caliber pitches right now for a guy who's also been playing shortstop. I can only imagine what's going to happen when you focus on pitching. And we've seen he's risen through the minor leagues. And he's had a really good season as a rookie this year for the Braves. Kind of saving their season a little bit. Not getting talked about enough how big Schwellenbach's been. But young pitcher, biggest game of his career. I think there's an opportunity to get on him. Get on him early. We saw the Mets were super aggressive with Zach Wheeler on Sunday night. And granted, only got 2 runs off of him. But Spencer Schwellenbach isn't Zach Wheeler. The ball flies a little bit more in Atlanta than it does in New York. I hope the Mets stay aggressive and try to jump on this kid early, get to that bullpen. He's beatable. He's a very good pitcher, but he's beatable. Everybody in this rotation is.
I agree. And in Game 2. In Game 2, we have Chris Sale. Of his last 7 games, Chris Sale is 5-0 with a 1.67 ERA. I mean, nasty. Guy is probably going to win the Triple Crown for the pitchers and going to, win the Cy Young. But 48 strikeouts and 9 walks in his last 7 games. Chris Sale, what say you, Mr. Draftneck Mark, about Chris Sale?
Yeah, I mean, he said it all. He's been dominant. He's been the best pitcher, arguably, in baseball this year. Just really good. Of course, the Braves would get Chris Sale, who hasn't been able to stay healthy for the last 7 years, and he has a healthy season, and he's back to his old self. back to the Hall of Famer that he was eventually going to be. He's disgusting. This is by far the biggest hurdle that we're going to have to climb in the series. Is just getting runs off Chris Sale in general is really difficult. We saw him pitch at Citi Field a couple weeks ago. We ended up winning that game, but it wasn't because of him. It was because of Ramon Laureano not catching that fly ball in right field. This is going to be a tough one. But again, Chris Sale, like every time there's more and more innings, I'm like, he's got to slip up at some point. He has to be human. So I'm hoping that maybe the situation's a little bit too big for Chris Sale. Yeah, he's a dog. That one's going to be really, really hard. But hopefully the bats stay hot. We've taken down good pitchers this year. I got faith. It's such a weird feeling to feel confident going into Atlanta when they've broken our hearts so many times in our lifetime. But the way this team's been playing and hitting, Luis Angel Acuna maybe get some of these young guys. They have no previous bias about what goes on. Maybe change some things up. I like it.
Yeah, I agree with that. So Charlie Morton, possibly going to be the last pitcher for the Braves in this series. Of his last 7 games, he's 2-2 with a 3.12 ERA with 44 strikeouts and 19 walks. Now the Mets have touched him up pretty well over the last few stuff, but he can go and strike out the world with that curveball. So we've seen both sides of Charlie Morton against the Mets. What do you think we're going to see in this series with Charlie Morton?
I mean, I think the game's not going to matter. I think we're going to end it already, which would be great. But in a world where Chris Sale wins, which is totally likely and the most likely outcome, I want this to be Charlie Morton's last start ever in Major League Baseball. He's a free agent at the end of the year. He's in his 40s. I want the Mets to knock him out early. I want them to jump on that really mediocre fastball that he has because he's in his 40s now. You can't let him get ahead. You can't, because that curveball is still disgusting, and he's still a Major League pitcher who's very, very good and had success in the past before, especially in big games. But I want this to be Charlie Morton's last start ever in Major League Baseball. I want him to get knocked out early. I want to send him off into the sunset with a fat L. I want to beat the crap out of Charlie Morton. We got to end this man's whole career right now.
Yeah, that would be awesome to end his career and then, go into the postseason. That would be fantastic to get that kind of result. So now we're going to take a look at the offense. We're going to start with Michael Harris. He was out for a while, but since he's come back, he's been a man on a mission. Over his last 7 games, he's hitting .455 with 4 home runs, 7 RBIs, an OPS of .486, and a slugging of .879. Michael Harris II. What do we think about him?
Yeah, really good ball player. It sucks that all these guys were like ice cold like 2 weeks ago, and now when we have the most important games, Michael Harris is like, I remembered how to hit. I mean, this happens with him every year. He's had some injuries this season, so he's been a little hot and cold. The thing with Michael Harris is he doesn't walk, and he chases a ton. You don't really have to throw him strikes. When you do throw him strikes, he does a lot of damage. But if you can get him to chase, if you can get ahead in the count early, maybe sneak a strike in there, first pitch, you're in the driver's seat, and he does extend the strike zone. So he's a super susceptible hitter to, the breaking balls and pitches out of the zone. Hopefully we have a good game plan against him. But, yeah, he's been scalding hot. And, honestly, in the field, I feel like he's unbelievable, too. The plays he makes, the arm he has out there. He has an ability to make an impact whether he's hitting or not.
That is true. Michael Harris is, he is a threat. But, like you said, he does have holes in his swings, and he doesn't walk. So we'll see how the Mets handle that bat. Another bat, one of the more scarier bats now that there's a few injuries and some of those guys aren't there. But Matt Olson is still there, right? 409 in his last 7 games with 4 home runs, 11 RBIs, a 581 OPS, and a 955 slugging. Probably the most dangerous hitter in this lineup outside of Marcell Ozuna. What do we think about Matt Olson?
Yeah, terrified, worried, scared. This is he's a professional hitter. I mean, we saw him hit 54 home runs last year, and I know he's not had as good of a year this season as last, but I think of him no less than I did coming into the year. Like, he's one of the best first basemen in the league, one of the best power hitters, one of the best left-handed swings. Whatever the accolades are, Matt Olson's got him, and you just got to be careful. You got to hope there's nobody on in front of him. Let him hit his solo home runs. I couldn't care less about those. Keep the guys off the base paths. Keep it clear. Pitch them tough.
Agreed. Now, finally, Marcell Ozuna. Guy, if it wasn't for Shohei, Marcell Ozuna would probably be in Triple Crown talks right now. And before we get into his numbers, there's a quick question, right? So if Shohei wasn't Shohei, right? Like, let's say if he was with let's assume that he was still with the Angels, right? And Marcell Ozuna's having the season he's having. Would the writers give him the MVP? Considering his past, considering everything, would that still be an option? Like, would they do it just because they have to, or would they actually probably not?
I think you'd see one of the first times where a guy who could win the Triple Crown wouldn't be winning the MVP. It would just be one of those things where Ohtani kind of changes your opinion on the DH because he steals 50 bases, he does other stuff. Marcell Ozuna kind of is that traditional DH where just get up to the plate, mash baseballs, that's pretty much it. I serve zero value outside of hitting the ball very hard, very consistently. And I think the fact that the Braves are not in the playoff picture right now and have a chance to not be in the postseason, I think that would play a huge factor as well. Like, your season was great, but at the end of the day, not good enough. Like, your impact was as much as you physically could as a DH, but you didn't make as much as a player. So I don't think I think you'd be in the conversation. I think there would be talks, and I think that's completely fair. But I don't think that the writers would give it to him. I'd hope they wouldn't give it to him. Like, that would be. There's been so many DHs who have had great years for teams. I mean, even look at Big Papi with the Red Sox and stuff. Those guys didn't win. Marcell Ozuna sure as hell can't be the first DH to win the MVP.
Right. If it's not one Shohei, and I mean what Shohei is doing is absolutely ridiculous. I mean it's insane. That's an anomaly. He'll get that pass. But now let's talk about his numbers. Over the last 7 games, Marcell Ozuna hitting .414, 12 hits, OPS on base of 452, a slugging of 621. So for this series, how are we attacking him?
Ooh, yeah, hard. I don't really know what his weak spot is because it just feels like he mashes everything. I mean, even looking at like the pitch tracking numbers, he's hitting like 260 against breaking balls. It's like that's still pretty good. That's above league average. Don't throw him fastballs. That kind of seems like the thing. So you're gonna have to get ahead. It's the same way we want to attack all these guys, right? It's get ahead early, make them uncomfortable, come in on the hands, sliders away, like whatever the plan of attack's going to be. You just got to keep them off balance. I think that's the best way. Keep them guessing, because when he does make contact with the baseball, it's pretty much always really good. Like his barrel rate's 96th percentile. His average exit velo is basically almost a hard hit ball every single time. The numbers are off the charts. He has 40 batting run value this year, which is I think like the second or third highest in baseball. He's a freak at the plate. I don't know, hit him. I don't know. Throw him every time he comes to the plate. If nobody's on, put him on base.
Right, and not to mention, like I only mentioned a few guys who to me stick out the most because of how hot they've been, right? Of recently, but the Braves have just a stack lineup, right? Outside of the guys that they're already missing, right? They still have Sean Murphy, who has been in and out of the lineup this year. Hasn't been his best year, but he still is a good, catcher. And then Travis d'Arnaud, old friend, who, I mean, I wouldn't call him a friend anymore, but no. he rakes against the Mets, right? He does his thing when it comes to playing against the Mets. So the Braves have a lot more, right? I don't know what the experiment with Ozzy Albies is going to be with him only batting right-handed. I don't know how that's going to work. But we'll see, man. I'm excited to see what the Mets bring this series. I think they brought it against the Phillies. They've brought, like you've mentioned, they brought it against so many other teams. I know a lot of people, are always when it comes to the Mets because they always expect the Mets to Met. But no, they've done well against so many good teams this year, right? They took that series against LA. They swept the Yankees this year. They beat the Orioles. They played good teams very, very well, right? And this year, as opposed to 2022, when they lost the division, they've actually played the bad teams well as well, right? They did their job against the White Sox and the Red Sox and the Blue Jays, right? So I think the Mets got to bring it this series. Let's go. Let's bring it home, right? Win 2 of 3, please. And let's just leave all doubt out of it, right? And let's celebrate in Atlanta. I mean, come on. That full circle moment of what we experienced in 2022 and all that trauma to come back here and do it to them, that would be everything. Right.
Amazing. I want nothing more than to win it in Atlanta, to end the season there, and then like Oh, the Milwaukee series. Oh my God, I can sit back, I can relax,
and
I
get
can
ready
go
for the
hang out with
playoffs.
some friends, go be social for a couple days. Because then once the playoffs comes, it's
Oh,
locked in
that's
time
it.
again. We're
Yep.
locked in. Don't talk to me unless we're watching Mets baseball.
Exactly. 100%. So we touched up on this a little bit earlier. Pete Alonso, right? Pending free agent. And looking ahead, there's been a lot of speculation on his future, right? They were talking, the way they were interviewing him and talking, it seemed confusing to me because every time he's answered the question, he's looked confused. Like he legit has no idea what he's going to do. I think we all know he wants to stay with the Mets, right? He wants to be here. There's the whole family here, everything, he wants to be here. But do you think he stays or he leaves? And how do you see that decision affecting the team?
I think it's weird, like being at the game last night and like the standing ovation, and it's like, damn, this could theoretically be Pete's last ever game at Citi Field as a
Yep.
New York Met. Like, obviously, we make the playoffs; it's a little bit different. I mean, we still might not have a home game; we still have to go through the wild card then. But it was a very uncomfortable feeling too of like, damn, like this could be it. And I think I agree with you. Like Pete, I think Pete wants to be here. I don't think any of the contract negotiation is anything of him not wanting to be a part of the New York Mets. I actually think it's the opposite. I think he wants that long contract because like, I never want to have to think about this again. I never want to have to deal with this stuff in the offseason again. I want to be in New York for the rest of my life, raise my family, have my wife, whatever it is. I want to be done with this. I love being here. So I think that's why he wants the longer years. I have no problem giving him whatever he wants. Like in
Right.
terms of like the years. It's probably going to age like milk. He's just not going to be a good player. Like in his mid-30s, I'm sure it's going to be bad. But Pete is one of the best Mets we've ever had.
Right.
I want him to be a franchise player. I want to retire his number one day up in the rafters with all the other greats. It would feel super weird, and I would be really sad, honestly, to not see him come back. That being said, I do think he comes back. He's had such a weird season where he's hit for higher average, but he's not hitting for homers. Like, what do we make of this? And I think just at the end of the day, Scott Boras is going to hurt him a little bit more than help him just because he's going to ask for too much money. I don't know who's going to give him that amount of money besides the Mets.
Right.
There's not a lot of great fits. The whole conversation of whether or not Pete Alonso at $25 million is worth as much as maybe Christian Walker on a shorter deal. Like, there's going to be so much comparing and contrasting
Yeah.
of what his true value is based on the money that you give him. There's not many teams that can afford to give a first baseman that kind of money. So I think at the end of the day, he either signs almost immediately back with the Mets when the offseason ends.
Right.
They sign the deal, it's over, it's done, kind of like Aaron Nola did with the Phillies last year. Or Pete signs in like February or March, and it's a long offseason for him, and it's a lot of sweating. But I think either way, he does end up back in Queens.
Yeah, I think he ends up back in Queens too, and it's very very interesting that you brought up the Christian Walker thing because that's his competition. That's who he's gonna go up there and compete against. Now Christian Walker is an all-star, just like Pete is an all-star, right? If I'm not mistaken.
I don't think he made it this year. I think he got robbed, but I think he's been on the All-Star team in the past. And
Okay.
regardless, he's an All-Star.
right, right, exactly. And I believe he won a Gold Glove as well, right?
Yep.
And so I mean, you have that. That's so when you have someone out there where, let's say, if the Mets don't want to try Mark Vientos at first, I don't know what their decision is going to be on that, right? If it comes to that. But if they don't want to do that and they say, well, listen, Christian Walker might cost us a little cheaper, plays good defense, could still hit bombs. Let's see what he can do. So I don't want Pete to come down to that because that would kind of suck for him. I mean, there's so much as far as history on the line for him. I feel like that means a lot to him more than just money, right? So I think if you approach it with, let's go with the years, less money, right? Would that work? Maybe for Pete, it might work because that means a secure future. You're here in New York. You don't have to worry about, am I going to go somewhere else? You have the DH, so that's always an option for his career. So ultimately, like you said, I think he stays here. I just feel like there's a lot of history of Steve Cohen when this is the same thing that happened with Nimmo, right? There was a lot of talks about the Blue Jays being involved, and Steve Cohen was like, no, when it comes back to me, you're not leaving this room until we get the deal signed. So, and he did the same thing with Edwin Diaz. And Edwin Diaz was a little bit different, right? He was like, well, if they got the money, we rolling. And he got paid his $100 million, and he's with the Mets. So I think he'll be here. I think that's what he wants, and I think that's what he gets. This is not like a Saquon Barkley
No.
Giant situation. It's completely different than that.
Yeah, I
All
think
right.
also you
Yeah.
gotta, like you just mentioned the Steve Cohen thing.
Yeah.
I think if Pete has like a big moment here, I think Steve Cohen's gonna be like, I don't care, give him what he wants. All right, fine, it's my money.
Exactly.
Here's how I'm spending it. I don't care what you say or what you think.
Yep. And there's so much coming off the books, and we understand the Mets are going to be heavily involved in Juan Soto. But we can't worry about Juan Soto right now. We got to worry about what we can handle. And, the good thing about the offseason is that you can take care of your own first, right? They give you a window where you can take care of your own first, and then you have all that time to worry about Juan Soto later. So I think they'll handle it that way. All right, Mark. So we're at the end of this. I'm going to give you some quick hitter questions. So first one. I'm not going to go with if. I'm going to say when the Mets make the postseason. Who starts game 1 and game 2?
Sean Manaea, Luis Severino. I think those are the guys I'm rolling with right now. They've just been so incredible, and I don't trust any other pitcher more than those two guys right now.
Got it. All right. Carlos Mendoza. He has shown true managerial skills, right? And leadership skills. Is he the NL Manager of the Year?
I think when the Mets make the playoffs, I don't know how you don't make him the Manager of the Year. It's between him and Pat Murphy, I think, even if the Mets miss it. Let's just say I think those are the two options. But for a team that started as bad as they did,
right?
The expectations were not high to begin with. It was fingers crossed this team's going to make the playoffs. Like maybe if everything goes right, this team can sneak into the postseason. But right now they've been the best team in baseball since June 1st, and a big reason is Carlos Mendoza, his leadership, his vibes. Been pressing all the right buttons. I totally think he's the Manager of the Year.
Yep. Agreed. Next one. Last one. If the Mets fail to make it, I don't think that's going to happen, but it's always a possibility. But listen, if the Mets don't make it into the postseason, are we going scorched earth, or listen, are we headed in the right direction?
I think headed in the right direction. I think what David Stearns has done this season has not only given Mets fans a lot of confidence in what's going on, but I'm sure it's also given the front office and Steve Cohen and the guys who actually pay the bills a little bit more confidence in what the plan is. Because for a year with, again, zero expectations,
right?
No significant moves that were made that made you go, wow, look at what the Mets are doing.
Right.
To be where we are, even in a world where somehow the Mets missed the postseason, I think from their perspective, this would be seen as a successful year. I don't think it will be, but I think they will be like, this was a successful year. We're building something sustainable here. Let's stay on path. Let's keep going. Juan Soto is a scorched earth move, and I still think that's a possibility whether they make it or not.
Right.
But I don't expect the Mets to be going crazy if they miss it, trying to double down on what would be seen as like a failure by the fan base.
Right. That's true. I agree with that. So again, thank you, Mark, for joining the show. This has been your Mets series preview. I'm your host, Rasheed McDonald. Join us next time, hopefully for the postseason. You already know the vibes. Let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets.